According to Britannica, the definition of the nuclear family has expanded with the advent of same-sex marriage. Children in nuclear families may be couples' biological or adopted offspring. Does this mean that the merch you sell supporting, nuclear families means that you support trans couples adopting, gay couples adopting, and spreading this rhetoric that you talk about?
So you're talking about the expansion of definition. So right now they've expanded the definition of woman to include biological males. This gets back into what I was saying earlier about the left controlling linguistics and just pretending that, okay, a nuclear family can now be two trans parents that are adopting a child. That is not the nuclear family unit that I am talking about. I believe that I am talking about marriage between a male and a female, which naturally and biologically produces children. So no, I do not take that new updated definition of what it means to be a woman or what it means to be a nuclear family.
In this wokey world, redefining terms is like playing word games, where the nuclear family suddenly explodes into a rainbow of definitions. Who cares about the original definition when you can redefine everything? Guess biology's just a pesky detail.
I've raised my hand before, so I just want to preface that I have opposite views, but I do want to have a genuine conversation without feeling belittled, so I do just want to preface that.
Yeah.
I am a feminist. I do study specifically academia and the structure of academia and what that looks like for people of color. So in relation to free speech, do you feel that free speech is free for everybody in terms of Western society and the America that we live in today, and at what point does free speech no longer become free?
What do you mean, at what point does it become no longer become free?
Some rhetoric can be harmful to other communities, especially in the way that it's spread in the media, and I think that goes for both sides. But
can you give me an example? It's always easier to answer a question if I have
what I know, we all are aware of what happened on campus last year.
I'm not.
Okay, great, look it up. So it was just involving the feeling of LGBTQ members of the community feeling unsafe with rhetoric that's being shared in terms of transphobia.
If you're a man, I need an example, and someone, if you're a biological man and someone says, hey, what's up, dude?
More of there's students on campus that are living in communities where they don't feel safe because of rhetoric of explaining that transphobia isn't accepted. So my question is just how do you think free speech impacts everybody in community?
Yeah, the idea that if somebody looks at a man and calls them a man, that they're suddenly unsafe because they've created a false reality in their own head. I don't abide by that. I think this is what's really happening is that we are celebrating mental disorders in America right now. I had a stalker, a very serious stalker at FBI ended up getting involved who had suffered from schizophrenia. He very much believed, and it was a terrifying thing to go through. He escaped the Psych 5150 hold, and he very much believed that he and I were in a relationship, and he would send me about 100 emails a day, okay? In the world of what you believe in your own head now needs to be accepted as reality, I would have had to marry him and raise my children with him, okay? But what was going on in his head wasn't actually reality. And me saying that this person needs to stay away from me and my family because there's something wrong with him and he was threatening to kill me if I didn't, raise my child with him, that was reality. That was something that had to be dealt with. So what's happened right now is the left is trying to make it seem that people who see reality for what it is are demented and are creating unsafe territory, and that's not the truth. In fact, what I think is unsafe territory is for people to be affirmed in their delusions. So I will never refer to a biological male as a female. And if that makes somebody feel unsafe, I'm not following you around. I don't know what happened on your campus. I wouldn't follow you around and say, hey, you're a male. Totally fine. Go live your life as you want to live your life. But when you say that the way that you live your life now has to impact me and I have to pretend that I see a woman when clearly you are a man, I shouldn't have to play that game. That's all.
The never-ending showdown between free speech versus feelings. Because nothing says progress like demanding everyone else play along with your personal reality show.
My question isn't specifically about anything you really said tonight, although I don't really agree with anything you said.
Okay.
I'm proudly part of the LGBTQ community. I've always stood up for my community whenever I needed to. I want to focus specifically on, I've been listening to you for a little bit just to understand some things. A live stream you did about Pride Month in June on Facebook because you were no longer allowed on YouTube. The event that you were talking about, I actually had the honor of attending that event with a lot of my really close friends, and I found it very perplexing to me how you choose to only focus on the things that are negative when it comes to the queer community.
I'm sorry, when it comes to what community?
the queer community.
Okay.
Do you not realize that people like you and people like the people you're around and that, continue to have this idea of us are the reason we feel that we have to be so openly proud of who we are. Your demented homophobic and transphobic rhetoric and rants just further prove our point that we have to fight loudly to be respected. The reason that LGBTQIA+ suicide rates are so high in this country isn't just because we're part of the community, it's because there are people like you who make us feel like we don't belong. The only LGBTQ agenda we have is...
Okay, is there a question in there or a speech?
Yes.
You got to ask a question, buddy. I know you wrote this out in your notes, but ask a question. Let's go.
How do you think other people who, with your beliefs, respond to the fact that your hateful and harmful rhetoric costs the lives of queer children every single day, on average, every 45 seconds?
Okay, so this is just going to be a pure boogeyman. You're pretending that someone committed suicide because of Candace Owens. You've got no facts here. You're just going, it's your rhetoric that's causing all of this. When in reality, you want to talk about the tea. I sat down with a man named Walt Heyer who was convinced to chop his penis off after your community told him that there was something wrong with him because he had confusion. Why was he trans? Because he was molested when he was 4 years old by his uncle.
The classic move blames everything on someone else's words, while conveniently ignoring the deeper issues at play. Where every ill is pinned on rhetoric and accountability takes a back seat. Because why address complex issues when you can just point fingers?
I'm a feminist, but
Really
I was just wondering, how do you differentiate between the extremism that exists in feminism as it does across, multiple different ideologies, but how do you differentiate between the extremism and how, feminists like me think? I don't hate men.
It's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it. It's a great, great question. So what you have to realize about the left when you talk about extremism is they hack words that once had real meaning, and they take them for their own nefarious goals, right? So they'll say racism, and you'll go, oh my God, no, really, racism used to exist, but now it means organizing your pantry. That's obviously not racism. That's completely ridiculous. You see something like feminism, and once upon a time, women were fighting for the right to vote. Well, now we have that. We have equal footing. And now they're using those terms. They're hiding behind the shield of feminism, and they're doing actually horrible things in society. And I blame feminists for almost every ill that we have right now because they've encouraged people not to act as a woman, and they bash men all the time. And I think that they have contributed the most to the breakdown of family in terms of an ideology. Now, for you,
answer my question.
No, I'm getting there.
Okay.
Now, for you, you're like, okay, but I actually am somebody that just believes in equality, that there should be equality between the sexes, right?
I think it's more culturally and socially, not necessarily in the realm of legality.
Sure, so I'm going to ask you, what is it socially? So you could call yourself something, right? That means that there's some fight that you have. What is it socially that you and I have as women that we don't have that men do? Why is there a need for you to be a feminist?
I think as women, we are undervalued when it comes to our intelligence. I think people, especially for me, as a woman who, I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Go ahead, let her talk.
For me, as a woman, I feel like a lot of people look at me and think I'm superficial. They think I'm vapid. They don't necessarily see that I could be intelligent, that I could speak for myself. They tend to automatically...
Guys, don't be rude. Go ahead.
I tend to get belittled a lot, and that comes from men, not necessarily women, right?
So you're saying in your personal capacity, men are belittling you, right? But when you talk about affecting actually a social change, this might be your personal experience, but does that mean that all women are going through this, or that all women are experiencing this belittlement by men?
And see, I understand that, but I think also when I listen to you speak, and you speak on why you don't like feminism, I hear a lot of anecdotal work, and I hear a lot of personal experience, like your experience in that one class that you had, whereas I've had 5-6 classes in my gender studies courses, and I've never experienced anything
that's totally
like that.
That's
ever.
totally fine.
You know what I mean?
They're
so
just
I just don't feel like it's fair to take personal
it's totally
experience
fine. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
I'm
I'm actually talking about the real world consequences of the dangerous ideology telling women that they have to take their clothes off, that they should be on TikTok. I'm talking about real world consequences.
Yeah,
I'm talking about literally the fact that women are no longer, like, they're by and large all climbing the corporate ladder, and that children are being ceded over to the state. So I was giving you an anecdotal example of what happened in my feminist class, but the repercussions of that are seen everywhere. What I am saying is that what I'm offering to you is not to feel like you have to give yourself an ism, right? Don't feel like you have to put yourself in a box. Don't feel like you have to put yourself into some weird social constructs. I think that what you'll find with time is that it constrains you unnecessarily. I don't have a problem with the fact if you want to identify as a feminist and you think that there is some fight that needs to be ended. I don't personally think that
It's gender studies. And the real-world consequence is a self-imposed box. Why change societal structures when you can just climb the corporate ladder and call it empowerment? Candace Owens challenges woke culture, exposing how redefining terms and blaming rhetoric distract from real issues. The story's not over yet. Are you ready for the next chapter? Hit like, subscribe, and to find out in the next video.